The Virtual Museum of the Pacific is the result of a collaborative project between the Australian Museum and the University of Wollongong. It contains over 400 objects from the museum's Pacific cultural collections. Within the Virtual Museum of the Pacific, anyone can tag and add rich media to the objects. Our project tests a new means of facilitating access for researchers, creator communities, and other stakeholder groups to cultural collections whose artefacts may not be physically on display. According to the ABS data from 2008, there were 180 museums and galleries in Australia. At that time, only about 5% of objects were on display in physical exhibitions, with approximately a 2% increase in new acquisitions per year. Therefore, with respect to collections on physical display, museums suffer an acute form of the Pareto principle. Little of their vast holdings are ever on public display. As collections grow, the physical space can never keep up with the pace of acquisition, so the problem compounds. Talking about the Australian Museum, the oldest museum in Australia, its director Frank Haworth recently told ABC Radio National that 350,000 people walk through the front door, but we have about 21 million people spending about 4 minutes or more on our websites each year. So our reach to people in terms of contact hours, however you want to measure it, is vastly higher in the virtual world than it is in the real world. But there's a good duality. The physical and the virtual feed off each other. These two observations argue for the Internet as a universal access mechanism and digital libraries as an alternative form of virtual museum display. In short, the long tail phenomenon, observed in digital media, allows much larger collections to be accessible to more people because, unlike the physical world, the cost of digital distribution is almost zero. In the last 10 years, the question has shifted from whether museums should put their collections online to how it should be done. Coincidentally, there has been a shift towards a more community-oriented philosophy of museums and the development of a more user-centered approach to the creation and sharing of museum resources. Across the world, museums have become acutely aware of the importance of connections between cultural collections and living Indigenous communities from which they originate. While objects, their storage, display, and interpretation remain central to the museum's function, intangible heritage, that is, narratives, stories, and memories of human engagement with objects, is increasingly valued as an alternative source of authority and enrichment for museums. The Virtual Museum of the Pacific is a model for online community interaction with collections. It operates within an understanding of objects and their meaning as dynamic and contestable. The aim is to provide better access to the Pacific collections for a variety of stakeholders and to give those communities a useful mechanism to access and annotate objects that are important to them. As a demonstrator for the Australian Museum's Pacific collection, a selection of a suitable set of 427 objects from a collection of about 60,000 is an important part of the process. The project's anthropologist selected the objects based on her knowledge of Pacific material culture in general and knowledge of the specific collection, with the aim of creating a representative sample of Pacific objects that are relevant and interesting for community members, researchers, and the general public. Further, the selection represents a number of overlapping categories which have similar attributes, but may come from a range of geographical areas or be constructed from various materials and techniques, so that the descriptors have enough variety as well as overlap. The Virtual Museum of the Pacific allows the relationships among the objects of the Pacific collection to be explored using a semantic framework that generates page impressions to navigate through the collection by rendering a conceptual view with links to semantically related neighbouring objects. These associations are automatically derived from the object tags, so that when new information is added, so too new pathways or semantic connections between objects emerge. The design results from more than 15 years of research in developing and testing the idea of navigating collections of digital objects. The current design presents a rich, highly visual and novel approach to navigating collections. As well as navigating individual object records, you can also peruse through clusters of similar objects. For instance, if I were to search for objects made of bone, you can see some clusters that relate to the search term, along with some single object records. Navigating these clusters of related objects is what makes the user experience of the Virtual Museum of the Pacific so unique. Let's have a look at all objects made of bone. Here we can dive deeper into these objects by making our search more specific, these tags at the bottom. Arranged in a tag cloud, both tell us the composite properties of our current view on the collection and also allow us to refine our search. Here we can see all objects made of bone and shell, then all of those objects made of natural fibre. Likewise, we can easily remove terms from our search so that we can broaden our view on the collection by clicking on the links at the top of the screen. So now that we can see all objects made of natural fibre. You can also browse the collection based on specific dimensions and categories. Within the Virtual Museum of the Pacific, we call these categories perspectives. These perspectives are derived from the Australian Museum's formal taxonomy used in its collection management system, EMU. For the time being, we're going to select the origin perspective so that we can browse objects by both their origin and materials. We can then see all natural fibre objects from Melanesia, and then after that, all of those objects from Papua New Guinea, and then within that, the East Sepik province. Again, I can add and remove terms across a number of dimensions. This clustering effect is a nice way to see how objects are related and allows for an interesting serendipitous browsing experience. You can also take an individual object, this instrument from West Papua, for example, and then see other objects like that one, along with how they are related. You can upload and link video and audio clips and other narrative-based content to the objects. Here we have a basket from Tonga, a kato alu, with a short video that describes its use in ceremonies.
From Tonga, it was brought to the museum in 1904. It's the best version of kato alu that I've seen and that anyone else that I know has seen. The kato alu is a ceremonial basket that's used in weddings and funerals in Tonga and by Tongans abroad as well. It's made from the alu plant or the taro vine, and it's a long process of collecting, drying, boiling and dyeing the vine before it's then
In addition to rich media, users can also tag objects with keywords, either by selecting from a list or by adding their own. One of the particular design challenges is to make sure that the resulting folksonomy of tags can contribute new knowledge to the objects in a consistent and meaningful way. How do annotations behave over a long period of time? Terminology in any community changes as understandings evolve. Historical tags compete with current usage for our attention. Given that a user group has privileges to do so, they can redefine classification schemas to suit their contemporary trends. To the Australian Museum, seeking to make sense of the acquisition processes that have informed its development and manage its collections responsibly, strengthening links with creator communities and increasing access to the Pacific Collection is a priority. The Virtual Museum of the Pacific, as a digital ecosystem that allows collaborative tagging as well as multidimensional browsing, delivers significant advances on that agenda. In summary, it has the potential to circumscribe a museum content management system via collaborative annotation. The Virtual Museum of the Pacific challenges the Western orthodoxy that museums are the canonical source of information about objects of significance to other cultures.